question.
One question is that your system handles multiple users. And the follow-up on that is what do you call success?
Okay. Want to repeat the question? No. Well, maybe for the audience, but I got it. The therapy device is intended for home care, so typically we have one patient because this is a form of vision loss which is relatively rare. 2 weeks ago, there was on NBC National News this segment on our product, and there was this patient. He was in a car accident getting the treatment and making good progress, and toward the end of the segment, they introduced his wife, who was also following the treatment because they had met at a rehabilitation clinic. They had the same problem, and that was a case where we had 2 patients, using the same device. So at this time, we do patient authentication using password. Basically, they have to sign up. But I'm very interested in the technology that Greag here will be talking about very shortly, which has to do with fingerprinting or finger-type authentication. And that's what we want to use. Now, there is also, every patient we have treated until now was a chronic patient. They had had their lesion for at least a year, because we didn't want to compromise our results with spontaneous recovery, and we have never treated acute patients. But now there is, we are really thinking that using this technique on acute patients shortly after a stroke, and that would be in a clinic setting, of course, could be very effective. So conceivably, we could have therapy device in a clinic setting, multiple patients, and we think also that this type of authentication that Greag will be talking about would be the best approach. In terms of...
I was referring to multiple lesions on the same brain, such as in MS. Okay. Well, our FDA approval is limited to stroke and optic nerve, visual cortex and optic nerve damage resulting from stroke or TBI. Now, sometimes we have very strange vision loss pattern where it's not going to be half of the visual field, but sometimes we have this what we call salt and pepper pattern. You have these islands of blind spot. So for every blind spot, we identify the transition zone, and we work on that, towards shrinking them. But our indication for use right now are only stroke and TBI. How do we declare, or determine that we have a successful outcome? Successful outcome, I don't want to take too much time, but takes many forms. Obviously, the simplest one would be to reassess the visual field, determine there is a certain amount of shrinkage. And right now we think that, for example, if your central vision is affected, by this visual field loss, you are going to lose your ability to read immediately. Well, if you regain 5-6% of central vision with this process, you regain immediately your ability to read, which is pretty fantastic. So the numbers in terms of shrinkage or recovery may not be significant, but I can tell you that 6 to 10% of central vision is very important. We have not yet experienced with some patient plateauing at 5% or 10%. Some of our patients continue to shrink. It's pretty amazing. 1 year or 18 months into the therapy, they continue to improve. So there again, it's difficult to have predictors for that.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next speaker. We'll save some time at the end for questions, and so we won't drive the mic guys too crazy running around in between. Greg Faust with Valid Technologies, a provider of user authentication. Greg, can you tell us?
Sure. And actually, I love the analogy that was made earlier by Dr. Burdick on the fax machine. Doctors are focused on medicine. They're not focused on learning how to use new gadgets. So fax machines are simple. They know how they work. They're reliable. They meet the requirements. The equivalent in user authentication which has been the password. It's simple. You can type in your name of your dog or something, and off you go. The problem is that the password doesn't work anymore, and yes, I know 17 of you out there said, yes, that's my dog that I use. But they're fairly easy to break, and they have to be changed, and they have to be complex, and so people get devices, and they get multiple passwords, and they change them usually while you're on call somewhere, and you come back and you can't get into your system because your password's changed. You call the help desk, and you're just ready to blow the whole thing apart. Or they give you a little device to tap in, and you lose it. That happens everywhere. So you need something that's easy, that's universal, that's reliable, and that's intuitive to use to authenticate. And a logical way to go on that has been biometrics. We saw that many years ago with the development of biometrics technologies that were highly reliable, highly able to be highly secured. But there was an issue with their scalability and their application, universal application. And that's really what we've focused on, is taking something as simple as taking a live attached human finger and putting it on a sensor from everything from your computer to your cell phone, and not having the device have any responsibility for determining who you are, but having a central authentication resource somewhere on the planet to authenticate you. And that's really what we do. It is a central authentication solution that can be deployed by a company, by a department, by a country, if it wants to, but more likely, but in reality, by a company, a bank, a hospital, or a county government, police departments and prisons. A couple of them are using it, but they have a central resource that they can enable everything from their logons to a transaction, to look up a patient record, to authorize a med, to everything, no matter what the application is. The application itself, and not some controlling source, is saying, I want to let this person do this, but I want them to authenticate themselves. I want them to put their finger on the sensor. And so it sends back, put the finger on the sensor goes to the authentication server then tells not the client, which is vulnerable, but tells the other application, yes, go ahead, this person is who they say they are, or who is not who they say they are. Go ahead and do what you want to do. But by the way, I'm going to write a system journal of this entire thing, which, just in case somebody wants to go back and look at what happened. It's something that can be extended to everywhere. It's a very simple concept. Obviously, it took us 4 years of our time and a tremendous amount of IBM's time to get this together into a working, saleable product, which it has been now for about a year or so. It's been in large scale use. But it's very simple. You have something where you need to have strong authentication. You don't want to be burdened with passwords or RSA tokens or whatever else is going on. You want something that can be applied to everything that the person touches through the day. VSSA, Valid Secure System Authentication, VSSA does that. It does it very simply, it does it very economically, and it's very simple to use. Conceptually very simple, operationally very difficult, very much like what the medical community does. Yeah, it looks simple. It just changed this and sewed it up and it worked. Well, we're sort of the same way. It looks very simple, and it is very simple to the user. It's fairly complex behind the doors, but nobody needs to know about that, except for the IT people who implement. There's really not a lot else on there. What I'd like to do is just give people time to do things and let people, ask questions if they'd like, and maybe come back later on.
One quick question for you. Is it device-specific, device ubiquitous?
Well, yeah, that's something new, and actually it's, I'm going to get in trouble here, but that's okay. I like to do that. We do not support just any device with VSSA. Right now we support the APC BioPod and APC BioMouse, or the Authentec, which really deploys the Authentec 3500 sensors, these square sensors. However, we are going to announce in a couple of days, so I'm not going to be in big trouble, that we are supporting multiple devices, multiple match